I'm Mark Bremer, and in this 10th movie in the tutorial series on Poser 10 and Poser Pro 2014 for Renderosity, we'll be looking at the creation of strand-based hair. I'm not doing a segment on prop-based hair because you put that on the character's head like a hat. Some hair has controls where you can move it around a little bit like you would move body parts with morph dials. That's a perfectly great way to go in many circumstances, but we'll look specifically at working with strand-based hair here because it's a lot more complex to get going, but you can also have some very beautiful effects that you can't get, especially in animation, with any other method. There is a penalty when you work with strand-based hair. It takes longer to render. And that's just the way it is. But if you know that going into it, then you can plan and work with it, and we'll deal with that in some of the render settings in an upcoming movie. I happen to have the Poser 7 Katie character, which is a child character. No particular reason other than working on longer hair on females is a little more pleasurable than males. We could do a Viking, I suppose, but hey, they don't take care of their hair. It just blows in the wind. What we'll do is we'll create Katie with kind of styled bangs. We'll go ahead and create some temples where we can get some curls. And we're not going to do the whole head. The reason for that is that working with hair and doing it really well and fussing with it can take pretty easily an hour to 90 minutes. But you get something you can use and work with, and it's fantastic. But I'll show you the method of how we go about it, how to go ahead and color it, and that type of thing. So I have changed my interface a little bit as we learned how to do in an earlier movie. I've deleted the library dock here in the pose room. We'll go over to the hair room by clicking on the tab up at the top. Now this looks very similar to the pose room outside of the fact that I have reformulated or reset my palette over here so you can see the steps. We have a movie on how to customize the interface, but we've got little controls over here, and if you click any of these palettes and drag them, we can see how they reshuffle, and we get these blue highlights that pop up that let us know, oh well, we can move things here or here, that type of thing. So I'll go ahead and do this so we can easily see 1, 2, 3, and 4. To get going, we'll go ahead and create some bangs, and again the temple hair, and then we'll talk about how we would create layered hair or why. We'll start by creating a new growth group. When I do that, this pops up and we'll say, oh, we don't want light hair 3, let's cancel. Let's come over here and get out of this and go directly to Katie, body parts. Yes, I actually work like this. Then we'll come down to neck parts, head. So our head's selected right now. So when we create new growth group, it's targeting the head. Now we can leave it at head hair 1, but we can also leave it at head hair bangs, which will be the colloquial name for the hair in the front, and click OK. The next thing we'll want to do is edit this growth group. So I'll click on this button, and I want to explain something that's different here. Our character changes color and the texture comes off in it so we can see where we're making selections for the hair to grow. Now you can see that we've got a new group here, and we have a new growth group right over here in step 1 of the hair room. Big difference between these. The group editor, which is what this floating palette is, allows you to change groups, whether we're using them to create soft body dynamics or grow hair or assign a different texture to it. That's what the group editor does. The hair growth group will only allow hair to grow out of what you create with this button. So now that we've created this growth group, the head hair bangs, we'll go ahead now and start drawing it onto the character, and we'll be able to see that. Let me scoot this over a little bit and zoom in on our character so we can see just a little bit better. There. All right, with this done, we've got a plus and minus sign here for selectors. We'll leave it at plus. And we've got two choices to work with right here. We've got a marquee selector, which is very tough to use on an organic form unless you're using it to grab entire legs and arms, that type of thing. Instead, I'll click on the disclosure triangle and choose the draw option right here. And we can go ahead and get started. Let me come down to add, mirror add, x negative to x positive. Now, if we look at the character dead on from the front and divide the face up into a grid, we've got a line going up and down, one going left to right. The left to right one is the x-axis, and I'm on the left side of it. Think of your geometry when you went to school, and that's negative. And the right side of the vertical line would be positive. So we're flipping it back and forth that way. with my mouse on the character's head right here. Now I'll just click, and as I click and drag, it starts drawing squares. Now the nice thing about working with the hair editor here is that you don't need to be super precise. The hair kind of covers up any imperfections you might have. And I can see right now that it's not actually duplicating while I work on the other side of the character's head, and we can remedy that in just a second. Now the best way to work with complex hair, unlike what's shown in the Poser tutorial in the handbook, is that you don't just select the entire head or the hair area on a head and click grow hair, because you wind up with a giant puffball. And while you can start working with it, it's a lot tougher to do that than it is to create multiple groups. So in this case, we'll have the bangs hair right up here. We'll have the temple hair. And then the smartest way to do it is usually to layer new selection groups or growth groups across the head in arcs, which allows you to change very selectively, very quickly, how long the hair is. You can use those same groups to define how different colors are applied to it. So if you wanted to do, say, somebody that spent $500 at a salon working on their hair and having different streaks throughout, you can do that, but you need to do that with the separate groups or hair groups. So that's one of the reasons you would split this up instead of doing a single head at once. Okay, well, I've kind of got this drawn in the middle. Let's go to Add and Mirror Add X negative to X positive. We see that flip over there, and we can tell I've got, well, a little bit of a gap right here. And once again for Add. There we go. Looks like vampire teeth there. How about that? Now we'll go ahead and create a new group, and something that's very nice with Poser as compared to other software I've worked with that grows hair is that you can have overlapping hair groups, which means that, see how we get this little chunky bit that comes out right here? Not a big deal. When I create another hair group over here, I can actually, when I'm creating that, come right over this, and we'll get hair growing out of both. So it's a nice way to blend the different areas together, so you don't have to worry about having obvious patterns on a character's head. Let's create a new growth group. This one we'll call Temple, and choose OK. You'll notice everything goes away, so you don't have a visual reference for it. We'll come down to Add. We've got our same tool selected right here. We can see it's selected right up here at the top of the group editor, Head, Hair, Temple. And I'll just go ahead and color right around the character's eyes here. How about her ear right here? Now, you can see how I'm kind of, well, being a little bit rough with it right there. Let me come down to the minus tool and get rid of these right by the ear. And if I want to expand this a little bit, I don't have to spend a whole lot of time drawing. I can come over here to Modify and Grow. Keyboard shortcut +, by the way, if you want to do that. Kind of grows and fills that in. So now we have two groups to work with. So with that done, I can go ahead and close this editor. And the reason I'm not going into all these details down here is that many of these have to do with more complex type of functionality when you work with the cloth room. It's definitely a higher level function. Poser is a very robust product, but we'll just look at it regarding hair right now. Okay, so we've got our two groups here. We can select which group we want to work with, the head hair temples or the head hair bangs. I'll do that, and we'll choose Grow Guide Hairs. Now immediately these guide hairs fly out of the character's head, and I'll keep my mouse over it so you can see them. Guide hairs are proxy hairs. They give you an idea of what's going to happen on the head, but they themselves are not the hairs. So it's just simply guides that all the hair goes with, and you work on these, and then you populate the hair with head. Oh, let me try that around the other way. You populate the head with hair. Okay, with that said, we can come down and use the dial controls real easily, and we can say that's too long, and I'll bring it back just a little bit. It's also quite perfect, which may be fine for your character if it was somebody that was spending $500 in a salon. This is a kid, so we're going to go ahead and change or increase length variance just a little bit, just to kind of get a little roughness to it. We'll also have, maybe we'll pull that back a little bit. And I can push it over to one side or another if I want to. We'll go to the other side. This will allow some negative values. So with the growth controls done, we can move over here to the third step, which is Style Hair. Now as I click that, we get another little window that pops up, and these are kind of our direct select tools when we're working with the character. With the Select Hairs tool chosen, I can go ahead and with a marquee tool select, and we see the ends of the hairs light up. So when I grab the move tool or something like this, I can go ahead and move these down just a bit. I can go ahead and spin them a little if I wanted to, move them one way or another. We've got the twist, which twists along the hair axis, and we can play with that just a little bit. Individually selected hairs, we also have the ability to lengthen those if we want to. So unlike working with the growth hairs collectively under step 2, we can work with them individually under style. Now let me close this little palette right here and explain some of these other options. The computer world is full of perfection, and so these tools are here to change that perfection and make things look a little more realistic. Before I start flying down these things, let's come over here to this checkbox that we have for Show Populated. When I click that, we see that we've got, well, it looks like more hair in there, and we'll see that the hair density is 28 hairs. If I happen to render this right now, it'll think about it for a second, and well, it looks like about as Spartan a hair as you can, so we'll be filling this in later. Now I'll uncheck that for now so we can concentrate on the guide hairs, and you'll notice there's a number here, 432.67. I really have no idea what that does. When we get that populated for the bangs area right there, we'll push up the value to something like 30,000, which will give us about 500 hairs or something like that, I think. But let's explain this. Tip width, normally the hair terminates at a smaller diameter than it does at the root width. And if you're trying to fill in areas so you can't see the head quite so much, you can increase the root width a little bit. Clumpiness is one of the things I really like, and I increase that quite a little bit. It tends to bring the guide hairs closer together in clumps, as the name would say. Now king strength is just what you would think. It's a little bit of that flex in the hair, so it's not perfectly straight hair. What is important about this, and you can play with that, is that we've got the ability to globally reduce the strength of it, but more important is we can delay from the root out to the tip how significant that is. So if we want the hair coming out of the head pretty straight, but we want to increase the delay so it only starts kinking out towards the ends, then we can increase that. The final one we'll work with when we get to renders is vertices per hair. They call it verts per hair, but it's for vertices or vertexes. The current setting is 20, which means that when we start bending this hair, we'll see corners to it. We'll see it move out a little bit and then change direction. We can make that much smoother by increasing how many vertices per hair that we have. So with that done, we can simply do Calculate Dynamics, and we see it hang down in front of the character's face. Now, with that done, you'll say, well, it's evenly across the eyes. What if I want to pull this over to one side? Well, that's perfect, and that's what the Style Hair is for. So if we want to reselect hair, and I'll come this way and rotate the camera just a little bit. Let me go ahead and select hair right in front of the character's face. Actually, let me deselect all. That's not what I wanted to do. Deselect. Okay, so we have this hair right here. I want to brush that more to the side, so I'll grab this tool. And when you're working with a translate hair, it kind of works as if the plane is right at the actual window you're looking through. So when I pull this, it's kind of perpendicular to the camera right now. Now with that pulled over, let's come back and explain a couple other controls we have over here in the dynamics controls. Gravity, self-evident. I usually don't change that. I always turn on collision so that it collides with the character, it collides with their own hairs, that type of thing. But what I do want is bend resistance. How much this hair bends down when we do the dynamics. Think of bend resistance and root stiffness as, and the stiffness fall off as hairspray. How much of this is going to move? So if we style this, we start putting in curves and we work with the style palette and actually twist the hair. What we'll want to do is really increase the root stiffness so that it doesn't move when we add dynamics. With the root stiffness increased right here and bend resistance especially is like increasing hairspray. When we do calculate dynamics again, we see it still being pulled over to the side there, which is great. but I may want it even more significant than that. So we can go ahead and keep working with the bend resistance if we want to right here, or the root resistance right here, stiffness. The tip stiffness is down to 0, which is perfect. We need to have a little bit of that. And then the stiffness fall off, so we don't have this hair immediately changing direction. Okay, well that looks all right now. It's kind of in place. If we go ahead and clear the dynamics and do this again, we'll calculate that and see those changes. Perfect. We can shorten this up, give it a little bit of a haircut. We could start adding hair to the temples and get some longer strands down here and use the twist tool under the style hairs palette and get some really feminine type of hair treatment to that. But what I would like to do now is to hop into the materials room and take a look at actually changing the material of the hair. Before we do that, let's actually show populated. And let's increase this value, I'll say to 30,000. It's just a number I typically use for hair groups. Let's do a quick render. And we'll see it taking just a little bit longer to do this. That's still a little bit light on the hair. We could increase the clumping, but we see the clumping taking place right now and gathering the hair a little bit. Let me increase the clumpiness a little bit. Something like 7. Let's bump this up to 50,000. Clear dynamics. Calculate again. There. Liking the look of that. Perfect. We'll do a quick render before we jump into the materials room so we can make sure that we'll have enough hair to see what the effects are when we start working with materials. There, that's looking good. So you can see as we add multiple growth groups across the head right here that you have the ability to go ahead and get the hair treated really nice. You can part it in the center. It does overlap. You can shorten up some, increase with blending. We can cross over these growth groups right here and make it work really well. But let's go ahead and head into the material room right now. Now hair comes in as a prop. It's automatically connected to the character's head. And what we see right now is that we have Katie body selected. And we can't even see the bottom down here where the skin is selected to work with. To get to the hair, we'll need to come up here and choose, instead of body, well actually not that, we'll come down to Katie. And we want props. Here we have head hair bang, and you can see the hair we didn't grow, the head hair temple. Now, if we had multiple hair like groups like we do here, you'll want color consistency between them unless you're intentionally creating some variation, and I'll show you how to do that as well. We'll go do head hair bangs, that's the one we were working on, and we're going to change the hair color. Now, this is where we will explain something in the materials room that I didn't spend too much time on earlier. There are two kinds of diffuse channels right here. We've got diffuse color and diffuse value up here. And then we have alternate diffuse and alternate specular. What this does is a process that's called anisotropic shading. And you know how hair gets that funny kind of shine, but it's linear. You can really see it. It's not like the whole person's head is a chrome ball. It actually has a lot of texture to it. And that's what this alternate diffuse is. So we've got this kind of bleach blonde look right now. What I want to do is change the color of this. So we've got the root color and the tip color. So like most people, the root color is a little bit darker. And we'll come to the tip color. And we'll keep it in the brown range, but a little bit lighter. The specular color, I'm going to leave it this gray right here. If we wanted to warm it up a little bit, we could. Let's see if I can go ahead and pull this over just a little bit. Oh, that's not going to play nice. There we go. All right, let me go ahead and render that. We'll take a look right here, and really important is, are we getting the kind of shine that we want on that? You know what? This isn't dark enough. Let's make it darker so we can really see that shading. I'll come back in here. Root color goes way dark. Come down to something more of a brown right there. Maybe not quite that dark. There. Let's try rendering again. As it thinks a little bit more. So the anisotropic shading is these little highlights that show up right here, and really to get to see that we're going to have to just zoom in closer. Give that a try. one last time. I want you to see it because it's kind of flat and dull right now because it's gray. I can tell you right now I already want to change this. And see where I'm moving the cursor right up there. I'm going to capture that brown color. But now I'm going to come down here and lighten it just a little bit. Now let's try this render one more time. And we'll see a darker head of hair along with some nice warmer highlights going on. As you get more and more hair, it's much easier to see these highlights extend all the way across the head. Or if you have really long hair, when the hair stays in clumps and moves with wind, if you start introducing those dynamics, you get some really nice sheen off of that. So if we want to copy this to another set of hair, what we'll do is engage one of the great features of this version of Poser, and that is compound nodes. The node area here to the left, this object that we plug everything into, is going to stay. We can't copy that. But what I want to do is just click and drag around these two objects. Once we like the hair color, we can increase and play with the noise if we wanted to, but that's for another time. With those two selected, I can go ahead and right click, and we've got the ability to come over here to compound node. What this does, oh, we don't want a new one. What am I saying? Now that highlighted, I'll delete that. Let me click there and collapse to compound node. This brings everything into just one right here. This single item we can copy from here and paste into another hair group and plug it into the alternate diffuse hair. So it's really easy to repurpose and get consistency between your hair groups when you do this. Now the other nice thing of working with symmetry in hair groups is that if we only have 4 groups or 5 on the head, we don't have to keep going around the head. We just select the group and it gets colored evenly on both sides. So a really nice way to work with dynamic strand hair inside of Poser. As a recap, we create some specific growth groups going steps 1 through 4. We grow the guide hairs and we modify those and work with them that way. Then we get very specific with the styling controls and the palette that comes up when we work with that. And then finally we use basically hairspray and decide how flexible this is and calculate the dynamics so we can see what kind of bounce, how far away from the character, and engage the dew collisions. Then when we come back over to materials, we can go ahead and change the character of these. We can go ahead and open this up if we want to and see these different items right in here, and then we can collapse it back again into the compound node and copy this between hair groups to ensure consistency between the hair. So working with hair is great. You can create some absolutely stunning effects much more quickly, I'll say, than working with material-based hair. It does have a render penalty, but the look and the natural characteristics you can get with it are just fantastic.